My name is Mark McConnell, and I'm President, CEO, and Chairman of the Board of Archway Manufacturing Company, Incorporated, and will serve as Chairman of this meeting. It's a pleasure to welcome you today. Before proceeding further, let me introduce our officers and directors. On the phone with us today are our current directors and director nominees: Thomas Buccamonte, Randall Ramsey, David White, Matthew Westendorf. From management, Michael Woods, our CFO, Brian Wrightson, our VP of Operations. And from our auditor, Bailey, Adam Webb. The annual meeting of the stockholders of Archway Manufacturing Company, Incorporated is hereby called to order pursuant to notice given as provided by the company's bylaws. With regard to forward-looking statements which may be made by officers or other representatives of Archway at this meeting or any other time, we caution investors that results of future operations may differ from those anticipated. We encourage you to review carefully the cautionary statements contained in our periodic filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I will now call on Michael Woods, as Secretary of the meeting, to report on the proper giving of notice and presence of the quorum.
In accordance with our bylaws and Delaware law, notice of the meeting was mailed on or about March 12, 2026 to all stockholders of record as of March 5, 2026. The certificate of mailing will be kept with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. According to the report of our Inspector of Election, we had 5,184,084 shares of common stock outstanding as of March 5, 2026, the record date, and the majority of those shares are represented at the meeting either in person or by proxy. Therefore, the meeting is lawfully convened, and the polls for voting on all matters are hereby open at this time. Today's meeting has been called to vote on the following motions, each made and seconded by the proxy. First, to elect the 5 director nominees to hold office until the 2027 annual meeting of stockholders. Second, to ratify the appointment of Bailey, LLP as the company's independent registered public accounting firm for the fiscal year ending November 30th, 2026. And third, to approve the amendment of the company's 2020 Equity Incentive Plan to increase the number of shares reserved thereunder by 500,000 shares. Fourth, to approve on a non-binding advisory basis the compensation paid to the company's named executive officers. Because no stockholder nominations or proposals were properly filed in advance of this meeting, the business of this meeting is limited to the 4 matters identified in the notice of meeting and described in our proxy statement. Are there any questions for the representative of Bailey, LLP, or any other matters for discussion with respect to the items to be voted on today? Are there any stockholders attending in person who wish to turn in ballots or revoke a proxy and vote in person and haven't done so? Please identify yourselves to the Inspector of Elections and let him know the total number of shares you'll be voting. The polls for voting on the matters before this meeting are hereby closed. The preliminary voting results based on proxies submitted prior to this meeting are as follows. Each of the 5 director nominees has been elected to serve as a director until the 2027 annual meeting of stockholders and until his successor shall be elected and qualified. The selection of Bailey, LLP as the company's independent registered public accounting firm for the fiscal year ending November 30th, 2026 has been ratified. The approval of the amendment of the company's 2020 Equity Incentive Plan to increase the number of shares reserved by 500,000 shares. The compensation paid to the company's named executive officers has been approved on a non-binding and advisory basis and will be taken into consideration by the board and the Compensation and Stock Option Committee. The report of the Inspector of Elections setting forth the final voting results will be included with the minutes of this annual meeting, and the results will also be publicly announced by way of a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Since there is no further business, I will ask for a motion that the meeting be adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move. Tom Buccamonte.
Yeah. All right. All in favor of the motion to adjourn? All in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. The formal portion of the meeting is adjourned. Well, we thank you for your interest in the company and for being part of this call. We're fortunate to have some improving times in both of our business units, despite a lot of uncertainty, in the business. or excuse me, in the economy at large. We've been doing pretty well in view of all of that, and certainly faced some difficulties in the agriculture commodity business, but otherwise have been fighting through that pretty well. I believe we do have some callers. I could take some questions. Any questions from any attendees? All right. Hearing none, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and for your interest, and we are adjourned.